All right, so hopefully that video gave you a little bit more clarity on partitions, why you might do it. Again, it all depends, right, on what you're trying to do with your Linux machine. Linux machine, it's a blank slate, right? That's why it's so popular. You can use it for all sorts of use cases. Because you have such fine control over the system. That's why a lot of these high tech, applications, these high tech context environments, companies, whatever you want to call it, they're using Linux because it gives you a lot of control. And in areas where control is everything, right, where every every ounce of memory, every byte of storage, right, is important. Linux is definitely going to be the tool you want to use. All right. So, what if you actually want to manage the memory usage? So, we've talked about storage. That's where you actually save your files, right? Taking up space in your USB, in your drives. What is memory? How is that different from storage? So storage is, you're keeping these things for a long time. Your photos, your sensitive information. Memory is similar to storage in that you're saving things there, but memory is actually for solving very quick problems. So when you store something in memory versus storage, so when you're using memory, you're using RAM, which is random access memory. That's where you actually store things to solve really quick problems. So maybe you have a really, computer intensive video game, right? It has all these graphics. Your RAM is going to go crazy because it's trying to, render all the different pixels on the screen. So RAM is you're putting one pixel, then you're putting the next one, and then you're wiping the RAM to put the new screen on, right? So that's where RAM is really useful for really quick operations. Um, Now, RAM is limited. It's actually one of the more expensive parts of your computer because it's the one that gives you computing power. The more RAM you have, the more things you can do at once, the more intense the program can be, and your computer will be able to handle it. Some of you have already seen your RAM kind of run out because as you started your VM, your computer gets really hot. That's because it's solving a lot of computations, it's doing a lot of work. So being able to check your memory, keeping an eye on it is really important to make sure that your system is running smoothly and so that it doesn't slow down. And in the case of your computer, right, maybe your laptop, so it doesn't get super hot. So some tools here we'll be covering those commands. There's free, top, and VMstat. Top is the best one out of these. It works just like Task Manager. So we'll be looking at that in the demo. But if you look up Task Manager, and you can see all these different processes running. You can see how much memory they're using. This is in Windows, by the way. In Mac, this would look different. You can do the same thing in Linux, and it actually has a pretty cool interface, command line interface. But we'll explore that in the demo. So each application that's running, we call it a process. So it's instances of applications. It could also be commands in Linux that are running. So we have our foreground processes. So those are the ones like your apps that you're running directly by the user. And then we have background processes. So I give a little bit of an analogy in the demo. It's like when you talk and when you move, right, your body, those are the foreground processes of your body. You're deliberately doing those things. Now your breathing, the blood flowing through your veins, your digestion, you don't really have to think about that for it to happen. Those are your background processes. Well, operating systems have the same thing, where they have these background processes that help the machine function, survive in a sense, right? And then the foreground processes to do the things, all the cool things we actually like to do. Because breathing, digesting, that's cool, right? But if you can't do anything else, right, then it's not as fun, right? So let's see. We have process management tools like PS, Kill, and Nice for viewing, terminating, and prioritizing processes. So we'll be focusing on PS, Kill, and Top for this week. Virtual memory, just a little bit of a vocab word. We're not going to be exploring it too much. But yeah, it's a memory management technique. So if you do run out of RAM, you can actually use your storage as RAM. So this is virtual memory. So it's a little trick that computers use. They say, hey, I only have maybe 4 gigs of RAM. Let me just go jump into my regular storage and let me pretend that it's RAM, right? Because they both save things. Why can't I use the other one as RAM? Now, of course, RAM is more specialized, right, for these high speed operations, high speed computations. But if you do run out of space, we do have tricks for extending our memory. And then we have swapping. We're not going to be covering that in depth for this week, but just know if you want to move pages between RAM and your regular storage, that's what swapping is. All right, so we'll be covering some commands. So in relation to partitions, we're going to be using fsdisk. So you have to give it a location that you want to partition. If you want a list of partitions on the disk, you can use the -l command. We'll be covering those in the demo. If you want to format your partition, so once you create a partition, you need to tell it, hey, I want you to be for Linux. I want you to be for Windows. That's what formatting is for. And that's going to be the mkfs command. So that's going to format the partition to prepare it for actual data. And then if you actually want to plug in to that file system, you actually want to see the files, make files, interact with them, you're going to have to mount. So we're going to be using the mount command. And of course, you don't always want to mount permanently. You don't want to have that file system all the time. There are cases, right, with like USB drives where you want to unplug it. That's going to be the unmount. And then as far as system memory usage, these are the commands we'll be covering. Of course, top, the best one, just saying. Maybe one that you're going to want to use for the lab. A little clue there, a little hint. PS, if you want to see current running processes. If you want to see all of the processes, because if you just do a PS, it's going to just show you the ones related to your terminal. If you want to see them on the entire system, you got to do the AUX argument there. And then we have kill. You can actually terminate commands. This is really useful when your command just won't die. Most of the time, you can control C, you can end a process, but sometimes you get zombie processes, essentially processes that you try to end, but they just won't die. That's when we use naturally, right? A little bit violent, but we use the kill command. And if your regular kill command isn't working, you can add the -9 flag to forcefully terminate it. Only argument you need is the process ID. So each process, as we'll see in the top, when we run top on our demo, has a little ID attached to it. So very similar to our task manager. And then nice, if you want to change the priority of a task, we have all these different processes. Some are really important, some are less important. You can actually manually change the priority of that process. So really useful, right, if you're running your own applications. You can say, hey, this application is more important than the other. All right, so for this week's lab, you'll be doing some partitioning. So you'll have to watch the demo first. You'll kind of just follow along. That one's pretty straightforward. Just do what I did. For the second part, I'll give you a little bit less guidance on that one. So you'll kind of, learn the commands in the demo. And then you'll have to figure out, how to execute those for the lab. And a cool little context, we're going to be using zombies in a sense. But yeah, that's it for this week. Videos for the demos are up. So go ahead and follow those along before completing this week's assignments. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.